Your silence hurts her more than anything you could ever say. Folks, if you've been here before, you know exactly what this feels like. She pulled away. The relationship ended, or maybe things just went cold overnight. And now you're stuck with that urge to explain, to send one last message, to make sure she understands how you feel. Most men do it. They think words will bring relief, closure, or even regret on her side. But here's the part nobody prepares you for, my friend. Every word you send keeps you emotionally available. Every explanation gives her access. Every attempt to be heard quietly hands her the power. And while you're talking, she's processing, stabilizing, and moving on faster than you realize. What actually shakes her is not anger, not arguments, not emotional speeches. It's your silence, clean silence. The kind that removes access, removes validation, and removes you from the emotional equation entirely. That silence creates a psychological gap her mind can't easily close. This video is not about punishment or playing games. I'm not here to comfort you or tell you what sounds nice. I'm here to show you why silence works at a deeper level, how it affects female psychology, and why Stoicism treats silence as an act of self-respect, not revenge. If you've ever wondered why saying nothing feels harder but somehow more powerful, stay with me. This changes how you see everything that comes after a breakup. Let's get into it. Number 1. Silence cuts emotional access. Let me speak plainly, folks. When you stop talking, you are not being cruel. You are closing a door. Silence cuts emotional access, and that is what most men do not understand. Words keep you available. Explanations keep you reachable. Silence removes you from the emotional loop entirely. Here is the situation most men recognize immediately. The connection ends or starts fading. Maybe there was an argument. Maybe she pulled back without explanation. And your instinct kicks in. You want to explain yourself. You want to be understood. You want to say the one thing that might change how she feels. That instinct is human. It is also what keeps you emotionally exposed. Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. Every message you send after the dynamic breaks is not for clarity. It is for relief. Yours. And when you speak, she receives something valuable. Access. She gets to feel important. She gets to feel chosen. She gets to regulate her emotions while you stay unsettled. Here is a real example. Eric is 46. He was in a 2-year relationship with Melissa, 43. When things ended, Eric sent long messages explaining his side. He wanted fairness. He wanted closure. Melissa read every word. She did not reply much, but she felt calmer knowing she still mattered to him. Eric stayed emotionally open. Melissa quietly moved forward. Now imagine the same situation with silence. Eric sends nothing. No explanations. No emotional check-ins. No last message. Melissa feels something different. Confusion. Discomfort. A loss of emotional certainty. She no longer knows where she stands with him. Her mind stays engaged because access has been removed. That is the key point. Silence does not attack, it withdraws. And withdrawal forces the other person to process without you. When you speak, you help her regulate. When you stay silent, she has to sit with the absence. Another situation. James is 52 and married. His wife Karen, 49, has grown distant. Every time James tries to talk about it, Karen listens, nods, and emotionally detaches. James feels temporary relief after talking, but nothing changes. One day he stops initiating emotional conversations. He stays respectful, calm, silent. Karen feels the shift. The emotional access she relied on is gone. The dynamic changes because the emotional safety net disappears. Silence works because it removes validation. It removes reassurance. It removes the emotional mirror she used to check herself against. That removal creates psychological pressure, not drama, pressure that comes from absence, not conflict. Most men fear silence because it feels like losing control. In reality, silence is how you take control back. You stop feeding the emotional connection that no longer serves you. You stop participating in a dynamic that keeps you stuck. This is not about punishing her. It is about protecting yourself. Silence becomes powerful only when it comes from self-respect, not anger, not hope. Self-respect says, I do not need to explain myself to be at peace. When emotional access is cut, something shifts. She either feels the loss or reveals she was already gone. Either way, you gain clarity. If you recognize this pattern type, I've felt that, in the comments. Stick with me, because what comes next explains why silence does not just remove access. It changes what happens inside her mind. Number 2. Talking kills sexual tension. Let me be direct, folks. Talking feels productive, but in moments of emotional fracture, it does the opposite of what men want. Words release tension, and sexual tension dies the moment it is released. This is why talking, explaining, and processing too much quietly kills attraction. If we speak honestly, most men talk because silence makes them anxious. They want relief. They want certainty. They want to feel understood. But attraction does not grow in certainty. It grows in space. And every extra word you offer collapses that space. Here is the principle most men miss. Emotional tension is not a problem to fix. It is a current to respect. When you rush to explain yourself, apologize repeatedly, or clarify intentions, you neutralize that current. What remains feels flat, safe maybe, but not sexually alive. The Stoics understood restraint better than modern men ever have. Marcus Aurelius warned that saying more than necessary weakens the mind. In relationships, it weakens polarity. When you speak too much, you expose your emotional position. Exposure removes mystery. Mystery is where tension lives. Let us strip this down. Words reassure. Reassurance calms. Calm without polarity becomes comfort. Comfort without desire becomes friendship. This is the path many men walk without realizing it. They talk themselves into emotional neutrality. Sexual tension requires friction. Friction requires unresolved space. When you fill every gap with language, you leave nothing unresolved. Silence allows emotion to echo. Talking absorbs it. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop needing to control outcomes. Talking is often an attempt to control how you are perceived. Silence is a refusal to manage impressions. That refusal signals inner authority. Authority is attractive. Another hard truth. Talking gives emotional relief to the other person. It tells her she still matters, still has access, still holds influence. That relief allows her nervous system to settle. Once settled, there is no urgency to reconnect. Silence does not offer that relief. Silence leaves the emotional loop open. Stoicism is not anti-communication. It is anti-compulsion. Speak when your words serve dignity. Stay silent when they serve anxiety. Seneca wrote that what needlessly disturbs the soul should be dismissed. Most post-conflict talking is exactly that. Needless disturbance disguised as honesty. Sexual tension survives only when you can tolerate discomfort. Silence demands tolerance. It requires you to sit with uncertainty instead of dissolving it with words. That tolerance builds self-command. Self-command is felt, not explained. When you stop talking, your body language shifts. Your timing changes. Your presence becomes heavier, not aggressive, grounded. Women respond to that shift because it signals emotional leadership. This is why silence feels powerful but difficult. It denies the impulse for immediate relief. It preserves tension instead of destroying it. And preserved tension keeps attraction alive longer than any explanation ever could. If this clicks for you, type "I've seen this" in the comments. Stay with me, because what comes next explains how silence does more than kill tension. It reshapes how she interprets your absence entirely. Number 3. Silence makes her wonder. Let me be clear, folks. Silence does not make her forget you. It makes her think about you. And thinking is where emotional attachment quietly survives. When words disappear, her mind steps in to fill the gap. That gap becomes the source of curiosity, doubt, and unresolved emotion. Most men believe that if they stop talking, the story ends. In reality, silence keeps the story unfinished. And unfinished stories stay alive longer than resolved ones. When you stop explaining, justifying, or defending yourself, you remove certainty. Certainty brings closure. Uncertainty keeps the mind engaged. Let's talk about a situation that plays out constantly. Andrew is 44. He dated Nicole, 41, for almost a year. When the relationship ended, Andrew wanted to explain what went wrong. He wanted Nicole to see his side and understand his intentions. Every message he sent answered a question before it could form. Nicole processed quickly and emotionally disengaged. Now imagine Andrew chooses silence instead. No follow-ups, no explanations, no emotional closure. Nicole initially feels relief. Then something shifts. Questions appear. Did I misjudge him? Why is he so calm? Does he not care anymore? That wondering keeps her emotionally engaged long after the relationship ends. This is how silence works. It removes narrative control from you and places it inside her head. And once her imagination is involved, emotion follows. The human mind does not like gaps. It tries to close them. Silence creates a gap that words cannot. Another example. Paul is 51 and married. His wife Denise, 48, grows emotionally distant. Paul used to respond by talking more. He explained his feelings and asked for reassurance. Denise listened, but felt no urgency. When Paul stopped initiating emotional conversations, something changed. Denise began wondering what he was thinking. She felt the distance differently because it was no longer explained away. Silence shifts the power dynamic because it removes emotional transparency. Transparency feels safe, but safety without tension leads to disinterest. Silence introduces ambiguity. Ambiguity creates a tension. Here is the part many men struggle with. Silence feels uncomfortable because it removes your ability to guide perception. You no longer get to shape how she interprets events. But that loss of control is exactly what creates curiosity. When you speak, you manage her emotions. When you stay silent, she manages them herself. Wonder is not always pleasant. It can feel unsettling. That unsettled feeling is what keeps emotional energy alive. Silence forces her to ask questions internally instead of receiving answers externally. This is not about manipulation. It is about restraint. Silence from a place of dignity communicates self-possession. It says you are not chasing understanding. You are not seeking validation. That confidence is felt even in absence. Silence also reveals the truth. If she reaches out, it is because curiosity turned into desire. If she does not, it means words would not have changed the outcome anyway. Either way, silence gives you clarity without sacrificing self-respect. Most men talk because they want relief. Silence requires patience. Patience allows wondering to grow, and wondering is emotionally powerful. If you have ever noticed someone become more interested when you stopped explaining yourself, type "I've seen this" in the comments. Stay with me because the next part breaks down why a lack of closure intensifies desire far more than answers ever could. Number 4. No closure drives desire. Let me say this clearly, folks. Closure feels mature, but it is rarely attractive. Closure calms emotions. Calm without tension ends desire. When you give closure, You give finality, and finality shuts the door that uncertainty keeps open. Most men think closure shows strength. They believe explaining, apologizing, or having one last honest conversation will bring peace and maybe even regret on her side. In reality, closure gives relief. Relief allows her nervous system to settle. Once settled, there is no emotional pull left. If we speak plainly, desire does not survive resolution. Desire survives open loops. When something is unfinished, the mind keeps returning to it. This is not romance. This is psychology, and silence is what creates that unfinished state. The Stoics understood the danger of needing resolution. Marcus Aurelius warned against demanding clarity from things outside your control. When you seek closure from another person, you hand them authority over your inner state. That dependence weakens your position and drains attraction. Here is the hard truth. No closure forces interpretation. Interpretation creates emotional engagement. When you explain everything, there is nothing left to interpret. When you say nothing, the mind fills the gap. And the mind always fills gaps with emotion. Closure also removes friction. Friction is uncomfortable, but it is where desire lives. Seneca wrote that smooth seas do not make skilled sailors. In relationships, smooth emotional waters do not create longing. Longing requires resistance. No closure creates resistance without conflict. Let's be direct again. When you provide closure, you make it easier for her to move on cleanly. When you withhold closure, you remove her ability to finalize the story. That lack of finality lingers. It keeps emotional threads alive longer than any explanation ever could. This does not mean you act out or seek revenge. It means you accept that not everything needs to be resolved out loud. Stoicism teaches acceptance without attachment. You accept what happened without needing validation from the person who caused the pain. Epictetus said that peace comes from wanting events to happen as they do. Silence embodies that principle. You stop trying to shape the ending. You allow it to remain open. That openness creates psychological weight. Many men fear that no closure makes them look weak. In truth, the opposite is felt. A man who does not need to explain himself communicates self-possession. He shows that his dignity does not require agreement or understanding. That independence is deeply attractive. No closure also shifts the power dynamic. Instead of you seeking emotional resolution, she is left with unanswered questions, not because you intended it, but because you chose self-respect over reassurance. That choice is felt as strength. Here is where most men slip. They break silence to feel better. They sacrifice long-term leverage for short-term relief. Stoicism teaches discipline over impulse. Discipline keeps desire alive longer than comfort ever will. If this perspective lands for you, type "I've seen this" in the comments. Stay with me, because the next part explains the exact moment when silence stops being temporary and starts changing how she sees you permanently. And before we continue, if you want deeper guidance on using Stoic principles to protect your self-respect and rebuild your emotional power, consider joining the channel membership. That is where we go beyond surface ideas and work on real, internal change. Number 5. Your absence feels sexual. Let me tell you something most men never consider, folks. Your presence is not what creates desire. Your absence does. Not disappearing, not playing games. Absence that comes from self-respect creates a pull words never could. When you are no longer constantly available, your absence becomes felt in the body, not just noticed in the mind. Most men think staying close keeps attraction alive. They check in, they explain, they remain emotionally present even after the dynamic breaks. What they do not realize is that constant presence turns connection into background noise. Absence sharpens attention. Attention is where desire lives. Let's look at a real situation. Kevin is 49, divorced, steady, and emotionally open. He dates Sarah, 46, confident and independent. After a few months, things cool off. Kevin stays present. He sends supportive messages. He offers friendship. Sarah feels safe, but something changes. The sexual charge fades. Kevin is available, predictable, comfortable. Now Kevin does something different. He stops reaching out. Not cold, not angry, just grounded. He removes himself emotionally. Sarah notices the absence immediately, not because Kevin vanished, but because his energy is no longer accessible. She feels the space. That space creates sensation. Sensation turns into desire. Here is why this works. Absence removes reassurance. Without reassurance, the nervous system wakes up. When she cannot check you emotionally, her body stays alert. Alertness feels alive. That aliveness is sexual. Another example. Richard is 55 and married. His wife, Emily, 52, has been distant for years. Richard used to stay present emotionally, no matter what. He listened. He reassured. He waited. Nothing changed. Eventually, Richard stops offering constant emotional availability. He focuses inward. He becomes less accessible without withdrawing respect. Emily feels it immediately. His absence creates tension she cannot ignore. Absence does not punish. It reveals. It reveals how much value your presence actually held. When you are always there, your value is assumed. When you step back, value is reassessed. That reassessment creates desire. Let's be clear here. This is not about ignoring or withholding affection. It is about removing unearned access. When your attention is no longer guaranteed, it becomes meaningful again. Meaning carries weight. Weight creates attraction. Your absence also signals abundance. A man who can step back without panic communicates that his life is full. Full lives are attractive. Empty ones cling. Women feel that difference instantly. Absence invites imagination. When you are not there to explain yourself, her mind fills the gap. Imagination is more powerful than reality. Reality settles. Imagination stirs. This is why your absence feels sexual when it is clean. Clean absence is calm. It is not reactive. It is not desperate. It is self-contained. That containment feels masculine. Most men are afraid of absence because they fear being forgotten. The truth is the opposite. Absence makes you memorable. Presence without boundaries makes you invisible. When you stop offering emotional access, you stop feeding comfort. And when comfort fades, desire has room to return. If this feels familiar, type "I've felt that" in the comments. Stick with me because what comes next explains how silence shifts control back into your hands without force. Number 6. Silence takes back control. Let me be clear with you, folks. Control is not dominance. Control is ownership of your inner state. When you speak out of emotion, you give that ownership away. When you stay silent, you take it back. Silence shifts control from reaction to choice, and that shift is where power lives. Most men believe control comes from saying the right thing. They think the right explanation, the right tone, or the right timing will steer the outcome. That belief keeps them trapped. The more they talk, the more they chase control they no longer have. Silence ends that chase. Here is the truth many men avoid. The person who reacts is not in control. The person who can pause is. Silence forces a pause. It removes your need to manage perception, fix feelings, or correct narratives. And the moment you stop managing, control returns to you. Stoicism teaches this principle without apology. Epictetus said that no man is free who is not master of himself. Silence is mastery in action. It is choosing not to obey every emotional impulse. It is refusing to let external behavior dictate your internal state. When you speak too soon, you reveal your position. You show what you want, what you fear, and what unsettles you. That information gives the other person leverage. Silence removes leverage. It keeps your emotional position private. Privacy creates strength. Another hard reality is this: talking invites negotiation. Silence closes it. When you explain yourself, you invite debate, reassurance, and reinterpretation. When you say nothing, there is nothing to negotiate. Control shifts because the conversation no longer exists. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you always have the option of not having an opinion. That idea goes deeper than it sounds. When you stop offering emotional opinions through words, you stop feeding the dynamic that drains you. Silence becomes a boundary. Boundaries create stability. Stability feels powerful. Silence also resets the frame. Instead of reacting within her emotional timeline, you step outside of it. That distance changes how interactions are perceived. You are no longer responding to pressure. You are responding to your own standards. That is control. Many men fear silence because it feels passive. It is not. Silence is an active decision to prioritize self-respect over immediate relief. Seneca warned that haste is the enemy of wisdom. In relationships, haste hands control to emotion. Silence slows everything down. When you stop speaking, you stop signaling need. Need gives control away. Composure takes it back. This is why silence often feels uncomfortable at first. It removes the crutch of expression, but discomfort is where growth begins. Silence also protects you from self-betrayal. You stop saying things you regret later. You stop overcommitting emotionally. You stop chasing validation that weakens your position. Control grows each time you hold your ground. This is not about winning or losing. It is about alignment. When your actions align with your values, you feel grounded. That grounding is sensed by others, even without words. Control becomes visible through restraint. If this resonates, type "I've felt that" in the comments. Stay with me, because the next part shows why silence only works when it comes from dignity, not hope. Number 7. Dignity turns her on. Let me say this plainly, folks. Dignity is not pride. It is not stubbornness. It is the quiet decision to stop lowering yourself for emotional comfort. And when dignity shows up, attraction changes tone. Women feel it immediately, even if they cannot explain why. Most men lose dignity without noticing. They bargain for attention. They explain themselves too much. They stay available after being disrespected because they fear losing connection. That fear leaks. And when fear leaks, desire dries up. Dignity does the opposite. It seals the leak. Here is a situation that will sound familiar. Michael is 49, divorced, steady in his career, but emotionally worn down. He dates Laura, 46, confident and guarded. When Laura begins pulling back, Michael feels the urge to chase clarity. He wants to talk it through. Instead, he stops himself. He does not argue. He does not plead. He simply steps back with composure. No drama, no bitterness. Laura feels the shift. Not because Michael disappeared, but because his energy changed. He no longer seeks permission to exist in her emotional space. That boundary registers as self-respect, and self-respect is attractive. Dignity works because it changes the story you tell about yourself. When you keep engaging after being dismissed, you communicate that your needs are negotiable. When you step back calmly, you communicate that your standards are not. Standards create polarity. Polarity creates attraction. Another example. Thomas is 54, married for over 20 years. His wife, Angela, 52, has grown distant and critical. Thomas used to respond by defending himself, explaining his intentions, trying to win back warmth. Nothing worked. One day he stops reacting. He listens. He stays calm. He refuses to chase approval. His dignity becomes visible through restraint. Angela feels unsettled at first, not angry, not relieved, uncertain. Thomas is no longer feeding the old dynamic. Over time, her tone softens, not because Thomas demanded respect, but because he embodied it. Dignity is not something you announce, it is something you demonstrate. It shows up in what you do not say, in what you refuse to tolerate, in how you carry yourself when emotions run high. Women are extremely sensitive to this, especially as they mature. They have seen charm. What they respond to now is self-possession. Here is the key insight. Dignity removes emotional dependency. When you no longer need her validation to feel stable, your presence changes. You become harder to manipulate, harder to dismiss, more grounded. That grounding feels masculine, and masculinity expressed through restraint feels sexual. Many men worry that dignity will push women away. In truth, it filters them. Women who were relying on your availability may fall away. Women who value strength lean in. Either outcome serves you. Dignity also protects you from regret. You stop sending messages you wish you had not sent. You stop staying in conversations that cost you self-respect. Over time, that builds confidence. Confidence built this way is quiet, but it is unmistakable. If you have ever felt attraction return the moment you stopped explaining yourself, you already understand this. Dignity does not chase desire. It creates the conditions where desire can exist. If this resonates, type "I've felt that" in the comments. Stay with me, because the next part exposes how weak silence destroys attraction and how to avoid that mistake completely. Number 8. Weak silence loses power. Let me be very clear with you, folks. Silence is only powerful when it is clean. Weak silence loses power because it is not silence at all. It is waiting, it is hoping, it is watching the phone. And women feel that difference immediately, even if you never say a word. Most men misunderstand this part. They think silence alone does the work. It doesn't. Silence backed by need is still need. Silence backed by expectation is still attachment. And attachment drains the power out of silence faster than words ever could. If we speak honestly, weak silence is when you stop texting but keep checking. You stop talking but keep replaying conversations. You don't reach out, but your peace depends on whether she does. That kind of silence is loud. It leaks anxiety, and anxiety is not attractive. The Stoics warned about this exact trap. Epictetus taught that suffering comes not from events but from our judgments about them. Weak silence is full of judgment. You are still emotionally invested in outcomes you cannot control. That inner tension radiates outward even in absence. Strong silence, by contrast, is settled. It does not wait for results. It does not measure days. It does not secretly hope to be missed. It comes from acceptance, and acceptance feels final. Finality is what creates psychological weight. Here is the hard truth most men avoid. If your silence is designed to provoke a reaction, it is already compromised. You are still negotiating emotionally, just without words. That negotiation gives your power away. Real silence ends negotiation entirely. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not allow your mind to be enslaved by hopes or fears. Weak silence is exactly that, slavery. You are silent on the outside but reactive on the inside. Women sense this imbalance because it shows up in your energy when contact eventually happens. Weak silence also collapses under pressure. The moment loneliness hits you, break it. The moment doubt creeps in, you justify reaching out. That inconsistency teaches one thing: your silence has conditions. Conditional silence has no authority. Stoicism is discipline. Seneca warned that the man who cannot govern himself will always be governed by circumstance. Weak silence is governed by emotion. Strong silence is governed by principle. Let's strip this down to its core. Silence works only when you are no longer emotionally waiting, when you have detached from outcomes, when your peace does not depend on her response or lack of one. That inner shift is what gives silence its force. Weak silence feels tense. Strong silence feels calm. Weak silence feels like holding your breath. Strong silence feels like exhaling and moving on. Women do not respond to the first. They respond to the second. This is why so many men say silence didn't work for them. It did not fail. They never practiced it correctly. They stayed emotionally available while pretending not to be. And pretense always collapses. Strong silence is not a tactic. It is a decision. A decision to stop feeding a dynamic that costs you dignity. A decision to stop measuring your worth through someone else's attention. That decision rewires your posture, your tone, your presence. And here is the final point. Weak silence keeps you stuck. Strong silence frees you. Freedom is attractive, not because it pressures anyone, but because it signals self-ownership. If this distinction makes sense to you, type, "I've seen this," in the comments. Stay with me because the next part reveals the exact moment silence stops being temporary and starts being permanent. Number 9. When silence feels final. Let me say this carefully, folks. There is a moment when silence stops feeling temporary and starts feeling final. And that moment changes everything. Up until then, silence feels like distance. After that moment, it feels like loss. Not anger, not drama, loss of access, loss of relevance, loss of emotional certainty. Most men never reach this point because they break silence too early. They reach out when loneliness hits. They send a message when doubt creeps in. And the moment they do, silence resets back to zero. Finality disappears. Power leaks out. Here is how it usually unfolds. Chris is 48 and recently separated. He had a long relationship with Megan, 45. After the breakup, Chris stayed silent for a few weeks. Megan felt relief at first. She assumed he would eventually reach out. She felt in control. Then weeks passed. No message, no check-in, no emotional noise. Something shifted inside Megan. The silence no longer felt like space. It felt like an ending. Not a loud ending, a quiet one. That quiet finality unsettled her more than any argument ever did. This is the moment silence becomes real. When she realizes you are not waiting, not watching, not hoping, you are gone emotionally, even if you are physically still living your life. That realization hits the nervous system, and it hits deep. Another example. Brian is 53, married for over 20 years. His wife Susan, 51, asked for space. Brian agreed and stayed silent. At first, Susan felt relieved. The pressure was gone. But as time passed, Brian did not chase resolution. He did not try to talk. He stayed steady, present, detached. Susan began to feel something unexpected. Fear of permanence. Not fear of losing Brian physically, but fear of losing access to his emotional world. Silence became final in her mind before it ever became spoken. Final silence works because it removes the option of return without consequence. When silence feels temporary, the other person relaxes. When it feels final, the mind scrambles to reassess value. What did I lose? Why is he not reaching out? Is this really over? This is not about getting someone back. It is about reality setting in. Words delay reality. Silence accelerates it. Final silence also restores your dignity completely. You are no longer pausing. You are choosing. That choice changes your posture, your tone, your presence. Women feel when a man has emotionally moved on, even without contact. Here is the hard truth. Final silence hurts because it removes fantasy. There is no longer a script where things can be fixed easily. That is why it lands so strongly. Most men fear final silence because it feels irreversible. And that is exactly why it works. It draws a line without drawing attention to it. When silence feels, final power shifts permanently, not because you demanded it, because you stopped asking for anything. If you have ever felt that shift, type "I've felt that" in the comments. Don't go anywhere, because the final part shows why silence was never about her at all. Number 10. Silence restores masculine power. Let's bring this home, folks. Everything you have heard so far points to one outcome. Silence was never about hurting her. It was about restoring you. Masculine power is not loud. It is not reactive. It does not argue for its place. It stands on its own. Silence is how that power comes back online. Most men give their power away slowly. They explain themselves too much. They chase emotional resolution. They look for reassurance when things feel uncertain. Over time, they train themselves to respond instead of choose. Silence interrupts that pattern. It forces you to stop leaking energy outward and start consolidating it inward. Here is the shift that matters most. When you stop speaking, you stop performing. You are no longer trying to be understood, validated, or remembered. You are simply being. That change feels subtle on the surface, but internally it is massive. Your nervous system calms, your posture settles. Your decisions become cleaner because they are no longer driven by urgency. Masculine power begins with self-command. The Stoics spoke about this without dressing it up. Control what is yours, release what is not. Silence is the physical expression of that philosophy. You stop trying to manage emotions you do not own. You stop chasing outcomes you cannot control. And in doing so, you regain authority over your inner world. This is why silence feels uncomfortable at first. It removes the distraction of expression. Without words, you are left with yourself. That is where growth happens. You learn to tolerate discomfort without needing relief. You learn to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into action. That tolerance is strength. As this discipline deepens, something else changes. You stop measuring your value through someone else's response. Your peace no longer depends on being chosen, heard, or understood. That independence is the core of masculine power. It does not need permission. It does not need applause. Silence also sharpens your standards. When you are no longer talking, you start observing. You notice patterns. You notice who respects boundaries and who tests them. You notice what drains you and what builds you. Power grows through clarity, not confrontation. Another truth worth facing is this. Silence makes you selective. You stop engaging in conversations that cost you dignity. You stop investing in dynamics that go nowhere. That selectiveness changes your presence. People feel when a man is not available to be pulled into emotional chaos. Over time, silence rebuilds confidence from the inside out. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that comes from alignment. Your actions match your values. Your words carry weight because there are fewer of them. That weight is felt even when you say nothing. This is the masculine edge most men lose and spend years trying to get back. Not dominance, not control over others, control over self. Silence is the training ground for that control. When you master silence, you do not need tactics, you do not need strategies, you do not need to calculate impact. Your presence does the work. Power returns because it was never gone. It was just scattered. Silence gathers it back. All right, folks, let's close this out. Today you learned why silence isn't weakness and why it carries more power than words ever could. We broke down how silence cuts emotional access, restores dignity, removes control, and ultimately rebuilds masculine strength from the inside out. This isn't about manipulation or revenge. It's about self-respect, discipline, and reclaiming control over your inner world. If you want to go deeper into these ideas and learn how to apply Stoic principles to real situations with clarity and consistency, consider joining the channel membership. That's where I share deeper frameworks and practical guidance for men who are serious about this path. And if this video helped you see silence in a new way, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for spending this time with me. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you again tomorrow.